So let me quickly talk about the agenda for this webinar. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the benefits of moving to Communicator 2016, the reasons, so to speak, for upgrading, and we feel they're very compelling. And then I'm mostly going through the issues surrounding the upgrade. So with regard to conversion, with what you have to think about with the new kind of server-side setup that we require, and what has changed in the Viewer API. And then at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about the features that are not there, and what we're going to fill out when it comes to feature-wise for the roadmap going forward. So benefits. So the reason for upgrading to the new architecture, once again, is there's a lot of reasons for it. It's not just like a minor upgrade. It's a complete overhaul and re-architecture and re-envisioning of what Communicator is. And one of the key areas of focus for us was performance and scalability. So one of the things that made us transition was this ability to can stream now data instead of having to load a file in one singular chunk. You're able to actually stream a model to the client. That means you can interact with it very quickly. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. Streaming, so we can view much larger models now compared to the old architecture. So you can interact with very large data sets on the client or in the high-performing server-side rendering. And we've built a server-side architecture that is designed to scale. So no matter if you have like only a few simultaneous users in your web app, or if there's many people at the same time connecting to your viewing session, we built something on the server that allows you to scale to any number of users very easily. Another big focus for us, and a lot of the pain points that people had with Communicator 2015 was around like the ability to bring data in from different sources in the client. So now this is all very well supported. You can offer your own data into the system. You can bring data in, and you can aggregate data in the either server-driven or client-driven into an active viewing session. So you can combine models from different sources, or you can work with assemblies in a more natural way by leaving them in kind of this shattered capacity. So basically, a much more powerful way and a much more flexible way to work with complex assemblies and to aggregate data on the client. And then another focus is customizability. So I think in the old viewer there we had an API and it was fairly powerful, but we tried with the new architecture to be much more flexible, to better organize. So when it comes to what the API can do, and so you can really customize the viewer on the client to your specifications. And one big aspect of that is that there's no required to take advantage of the server. This, like afterthought, it came later. It had some limitations. Certain functionality wasn't there. That has all been removed, and very back and forth between client and server-side rendering. So the first aspect of conversion, the first kind of entry point into Converter, of course, is getting the data actually into the system. And the good news is Converter is still there. The command line interface that is driving Converter is still very similar to how it was before. So there shouldn't be too many issues getting Converter plugged into the Converter and the new architecture plugged in. There's now also a library version available. That means if you want to integrate conversion functionality directly into a server-side application, you can, which gives you a lot more flexibility of, you can bring in a model and then convert it to different output formats, maybe create different versions of the same format. All that wasn't really easily supported with the old command line interface, but now with that should be. The big change is that instead of outputting this, what we call the HWF format, exporting the stream into a stream cache model. And that is this new format that is a little bit at the heart of the new Communicator, and which is it's designed around streaming and data aggregation. So that is a completely different format. There's really no, it's internally not comparable to what HWF was. And it's not even a single file. It's actually a directory that gets created when you create this stream cache model that you specify. There's an optional single file version we're gonna support later this year for people who have some issues with dealing with like storing multiple files or even directories on the server. But it is hard, you know. The stream cache model is not like a single HWF. It's a different beast. And one aspect and one important part of it is that at least for now, with the HWF format is no longer supported. That means you do have to, if you're moving to the new architecture, you will be required to reconvert the data, and I mentioned that below there. So that is a recommended workflow that we have for transition. Take the original CAD data that you should still have available, reconvert it to the new format, and then you're automatically getting all the benefit, and you get the full. You're not losing any data, basically. We do have plans. We heard from customers that is potentially a pain point, that they have a lot of data already converted in HWF, and that and just reconverting all this data in might not be the best option, at least in the short term. So we are planning on providing an upgrade path there, so that it will be possible in the SP2 to actually load HWS directly in the viewer. That is meant as kind of a transitioning level functionality. So we're not going to have the support for HWF indefinitely, but at least for the immediate future, that might be an option for you to take advantage of the new viewing capabilities and the performance-related enhancements without actually having to make the full transition to the new stream cache format. But again, this should be as a last resort option. That's the path forward that we recommend is reconvert your CAD data to the new format, and that gives you all the benefits. We also have, and the key aspect of that new architecture is that the models are actually streamed via the WebSocket protocol, and that means there's going to be a server session, a server instance running for every client that is connecting to. We do still support the HTTP-based file loading that doesn't require a special server. We can just like put the model on the server on a file server and load it directly. It's a file. Advantage of the full capability when it comes to streaming, of being able to load and talk about in the next slide. The best option is really to convert to the stream cache format and then deploy the server infrastructure to allow the streaming of the data. That's basically everything is in the new communicator is designed around that after that workflow. Okay, let's move on. Again, if you have any questions or anything, then just type it in that box. So the big benefits, once again, of the stream cache cache formats. Fast time to first interaction. Instead of having to wait until the model is completely, you give it almost instantaneously in a few seconds after the first data comes in. It's moved currently to the scene, and activity. It's really it's a real big. We feel it's a big benefit to the user, to the client, to be able to view the model and very, very quickly. Another aspect is it's a very easy on-demand loading. So that is at any point the client can basically decide to keep data on the server and then only load something that is relevant to the client. So a really large model and the user only wants to work with a subset. It's very, very easy to just pull down whatever the client currently needs. And an extension of that is that we also be keeping the stuff that you don't currently need, like certain user data, maybe properties or measurement data when the user is currently not measuring. We keep that stuff in general on the server, which of course conserves memory, which is very important, I think, in a web context where you can't really rely on customers having a high-powered system. It's designed for data aggregation and shared workflows. That means this idea of instead of having a singular model and a singular monolithic model, being able to bring in data and combine data on the client and the server. That's fully supported with this new format. But you can do that on the server by providing an XML structure definition to the model, or you can do that completely on the client. So client-driven, you can start even with an empty model and then bring data in from different sources very easily. Offering, that's another important aspect, was really a black box, and while it was derived from our application, there wasn't really an easy path to offer it yourself, and that is now fully supported. So there's going to be an offering library accompanying the new communicator, which allows you to create the data basically from scratch. But you can also use that offering library to aggregate models together. So to take existing models, combine them into new ones, create your model tree basically from the start, or put things like PMI or model structure into an existing model. Okay. So Viewer API, I think that's so. The spirit of the viewer is still very similar, but we have it has undergone changes. So it's not, the API hasn't, it's not the same. If you have the viewer, if you use the viewer of the old communicator, you will have to make changes. So we felt that was necessary because in the old viewer it was most functions were just on one big object, so that really became a little unwieldy. So now things are, as we feel, much better organized. Things are organized into functional groups. You have higher level objects and classes that combine certain functionality together. For example, there's now that class and if you're using measurement, then there's measurement manager, and so everything is in a much better, nicer, organized way that makes it easier for you to find what you're looking for when it comes to. Also, it's just a better programming paradigm. Everything is organized in a single namespace now. So there's a communicator namespace, so that combines all the functionality there, and we providing now some general helper functional classes that make your life easier with a lot of like helper functionality. So we have a point class, a playing class, and things like that. Which provide certain math functions, and most of the stuff that you're looking for in that regard you probably find in one of those classes. An API between client and server-side rendering, once again, that is, I think, what felt was very important, because it was in the old architecture. This transitioning between client-side and server-side rendering was a bit of a pain point. Now it's just a matter of flipping a switch, essentially, and of course having the hardware on the back end to really support server-side rendering. But from an API perspective and from a programming perspective on the client in JavaScript, basically there's no change. It doesn't really matter if you're working in client or server-side rendering mode. With regard to recommendations for transitioning, I think the best path forward is to really read the documentation and to particularly study the samples that are in the package. So there's really like a wide variety of samples that kind of touch the new Viewer API, and that's, I think, the best path forward for people to see what has really changed, how to get certain functionality, how can I insert a cutting plane now, how can I deal with measurement. All that is, I think the samples are the best path for looking at that. And then just kind of keep in mind that the functionality, you should see all the functionality in the old communicator in some way, shape, or form. It will be in the new one, but you might have to look at objects. So if something is related to like a model operation, like in the example below, then previously that was just a function on the main viewer object. Now it's organized and it's part of the model. So, for example, changing the part color, that's now a model operation. One big change, and it's a little bit it's a little bit of a shift that we have to make because we have a client application and server-side rendering is a first-class citizen. A lot of the functions are now going to be asynchronous, which in the example below, if you're requesting the bounding box for a particular part or a node inside the tree, instead of just getting the bounding box, getting an object with the bounding box returned, what you're actually getting returned is it's a so-called promise, which is similar to a callback, which basically says, well, here is, we don't have that information yet. We might need to request it from the server, so that might, and that basically, and you get that back later. It's in an asynchronous capacity. So you see that below. The way that works is basically, it's very, again, very similar to the callback architecture, but a little more convenient and easier to use. So you just provide, you basically set a promise on this function, and then the promise will return in a synchronous fashion. That promise actually contains the information you're looking for, like for example the bounding box, and then you asynchronously operate on that data. It's a little bit of a in some ways, but it shouldn't be too difficult, and it was really necessary to make sure that the client is not blocking and that we can do these kind of server-client communications that are required for the new architecture to work efficiently. It also handles error messages very well. So I think it's a very easy and convenient way to work in this kind of a synchronous environment that is that is essentially the new world of Communicator. So from a rendering technology side, I think a key aspect, and this is just kind of an overview over there, that's nothing really that you have to worry about, but there's Scene.js is no longer there. So we've taking a hard look at what we should do when it comes to what the underlying rendering technology should be. And instead of using this open source scene graph, we developed a basic our own graphics kernel from scratch. It's written in C++ and compiled to JavaScript, which means we can leverage the same graphics technology for server-side rendering and client-side rendering. And it is highly optimized for streaming and dealing with very large. And again, it supports these advanced workflows, being able to bring in more data into the model and do that in a way that is optimal and doesn't cause any hiccups or performance problems. And the reality is we've been in this business for a long time. TechSoft is like one of the leading companies when it comes to like graphics technology, and so taking advantage of that knowledge and know-how. That I think that made a lot of sense for us. Server-side rendering, very quickly, again, same engine for client and server. On the server, you can do a lot more. It depends on what hardware you're using, but you have a much higher memory ceiling, and you can have much better performance by using the latest, like for example, grid technology or any of those NVIDIA graphics hardware that's available, for example, on Amazon now. But other than that, it's essentially the same infrastructure. So we moved away from this model that the client-side rendering was just a simple file-based model, where the server-side rendering required like server infrastructure. Now you have basically the same infrastructure that you use in the server and client-side case, which we feel is unifies things a little bit. So server. So that certainly for people who haven't taken before and have yet just used using HWF, there's going to be a big step now, because you're moving away from not having to worry at all about any kind of server infrastructure to now having to think about in terms of like, hey, I need a server. That server needs to be able to support a certain amount of simultaneous sessions. These things basically is something that is a big shift that you need to make, and we try to make that shift easy for you. We have a lot of examples. The documentation is extensive when it comes to setting up these things, but that's basically now the biggest, I think, change from the new architecture is that new format. This new paradigm of streaming requires basically to use like a server client architecture, and that means like there's a server process now running for every viewing session. And so there's various there. There's what we call the service broker, which manages essentially like an infrastructure or an infrastructure of client and server-side rendering machines. Then there's a process manager which sits on every machine and manages individual viewing sessions. And then there's the actual viewing process itself. So all these components can be, in a way, can mix and match, so you can decide if maybe I don't need all that extra like management, and all I want is like start up a single viewing session and manage everything myself. So you have the option to do that. In general, we try to make it very easy to configure the server components. There's something we call the settings builder script that we ship with our installation that allows you to very easily put in things like IP addresses or port numbers, everything you need to basically configure an individual server and any of these components. That's something that's part of the package. To just quickly go over the different deployment scenarios, if you do run the settings builder, you see that there's 3 different options for you. There's a development option where everything, all the components are combined to be used on a single machine. That is good if you have for developers for testing purposes. If you just want to try out the viewer API, or if you convert a file and see how it runs, or the performance is inside the viewer with your own data, then that is the best option. It's not something that you should use in a real deployment scenario, because it's usually not enough to have just a single machine running everything. You do want to have like a distributed environment, and at that point, the other option where you have a single service broker with an IP address and that communicates then to multiple client machines, and that is the scenario that allows for this on-demand scaling. So if you are running out of resources on one machine, or then you can just bring up using an infrastructure like Amazon, for example, that provides like Beanstalk or other technologies. You can then scale up to an almost unlimited amount of hardware and then support as many users simultaneously as there are certain for using server-side rendering, but all that is basically supported with this distributed mode. And then there's viewer standalone. That is basically where all we do is give you a single viewing instance. So it's up to you, it's up to the user then to decide, hey, I'm going to manage all these instancing myself. So I'm going to manage this, you're getting an IP address back that you basically you have to deal with handling multiple viewing sessions simultaneously. So if you have already a means of scaling, if you deal with session management in your web application already in a certain way, then that might be the best option. Okay. So another aspect, so to communicate with these components, in particular with the service broker, we have a REST API. So that makes it very easy to communicate and integrate it into any kind of server environment. So all you need to do is you have a REST API call that you make to the service broker that gives you then what we call like an endpoint back, which is essentially key address and a port number for a particular viewing session, and then you can operate on that session. You can ask certain queries, certain session states, and so on. But the main thing is that there's a simple REST-based API, HTTP-based REST-based API that facilitates the communication with the server. And to make it even easier, we actually created various integration examples for a lot of the common server environments, and that's part of the package, which allows you to see, well, if your application is a C# or Java, or if you're communicating directly via JavaScript, then we're already providing some higher level classes that wrap this REST API wrapper a little bit in a kind of a convenient way. So from a transition recommendation perspective, the key is don't use as I said before, don't use a development configuration for deployment. I think some customers have this idea, oh, well, I have this single self-contained thing where everything is on one machine and then I replicate that on multiple hardware. That's not the approach that we recommend. We recommend having one service broker communicating with multiple machines, and it's a little more complex, and it means that, but it's the most efficient and best way that we feel to use this technology. Things like SSL can be configured inside the settings builder, but you do need to worry about proxies. So I think the way the viewer works, it's meant to run on every viewing session runs on a non-standard port, which is okay in a lot of cases. But if you have to route your data through some firewalls, especially on larger enterprises and larger companies, then you do need to put like a proxy in front of that. So that we have some example of that, and we can certainly help you getting that deployed. There's different, depending on again what server environment you're using. There's different options available there, but that's certainly something you need to think about if you want to make sure that everyone can actually connect and view your data. Okay. So I think that's basically the general plan is to have one major release per year and then 2 to 3 service packs every year as well. The next one is currently planned for the 5th of August, and that will and then we have one service pack 2 August, and then the next major release with a major set of new features will come out early December of this year. That will be Communicator 2017. And then as needed and based on demand, and we also going to have update releases in between. So for this service pack, so actually there's one service pack that's coming out basically today, or it's imminent, but it should be out, but either today or at least at the end of the week. The focus of that was mostly like matching the functionality of the old communicator in the areas where we are still lagging behind. So we're now going to have texture mapping in there, PMI cross-highlighting, the PMI text is now filled. We support the 3D pins that we had in the old communicator. Anti-aliasing is back, and the various export options that were missing from the initial release are also now supported. And that on top of a bunch of new features, improvements to the way we handle the shattered mode, and a lot of bug fixes. So that release is coming out very, very soon. And of a roadmap, so for SP2 we plan to like fill in the final blanks of that we still don't support yet of the old communicator, which is support for client-side screenshots, configuration support, physical properties, attribute filtering. Those are the major like features we feel that still need to be there. When it comes to like input formats, we used to support DWF. That is currently, as you probably noticed, not in the new communicator. That's something that we're trying to still think about the best option forward. We really want to, if you don't want to just support these formats in the very simple way we did in the old communicator, where we just give you the none of the assembly of the model structure or the layers or whatever else is in the DWG file. So you want to do it right. And so if these formats are going to come back, but they come back in a way that allows you to like fully interrogate the model and have similar capabilities to the other cut-related formats. Okay, so that's basically the end of it. Now I think it's a time for questions. Do you have any questions? Any that come up? Please ask them now. Okay, it looks like no questions. Yeah, then thank you very much. I think if you have, of course, you know, this is, oh, sorry, there's one coming in. So I can answer that here. I assume that the 2016 version support its own markups. Yes, you can define custom much more well-defined, and that gives you more options than in the old Communicator 2015. But yes, that will definitely be supported. Question here. Another question. Oh, there we go. Another question around the transitioning time. So that is, of course, a very important point. Right now, the plan indeed is that we offer support for the old communicator until the end of the year. That is still the plan. So we encourage everyone to at least look at the new format and transition over that. And what happens after that remains to be seen. I mean, we certainly we hope everyone's going to be moved to the new communicator, and we want to make the transitioning path very easy. But if it turns out that that's not possible, then we will probably go longer with regard to at least provide to the import form. Okay, so the next question was around how can you aggregating data on the server and client. I think that's a little bit that's a big subject, and I think the best way for you would be to actually take a look at the package and the examples that we provide there. But basically, what you do is you give an XML file, an XML specification of the assembly structure, which includes the individual models that you want to aggregate, and then the viewer will automatically generate and pull in the data. Either in the server, either from the server by offering that data right before the viewing session starts, or from the client within an existing viewing session. But for detailed information, I suggest you just go back to us. We give you some more examples, documentation. So SSL support, yeah. So that will be SSL will be supported in the release. There's an interface for that in the initial in the settings builder, and you can provide your certificate there. So that is a feature of SB1. Here a question around the markup and can the old markup format be used? The answer is no. I think that format has changed, and so that is something that we don't really have a path for converting the old kind of JSON-based markup to the new format. So that's something you handle yourself. So the next question around mobile, what's going to happen there? So you can still, so that's something that, so the strategy for mobile is something that we have to still completely define. So you can certainly use our viewer on mobile, but I'm assuming that you talk about using the HSF and using then our native viewer based on Visualize. So we're going to still have the option to export an HSF format in Communicator 2016, so that you can use that to at least get the visual data into the system, just like it was in the old Communicator. You just have to export to 2 different output formats at that point. Do we use any third-party tool for the streaming capability? No, that was all developed completely in-house. We obviously taking advantage of these web technologies, again, WebSockets, and we're using something mscripten for to take our C++ code that we develop and that's used on the server and client-side rendering and then convert it to JavaScript. But that's all basically developed by our in-house without any external tools. Okay, I think that's That's all when it comes to questions. And again, please get back to us for any more questions that you might have. Go through support, or you can contact me or Matthew directly. Okay, that completes the seminar. Thank you very much for attending. And again, this will be made available as recording later. And thank you very much, and have a nice day.